United Nations leadership in finding a solution through diplomacy and dialogue already initiated in recent discussions in the Security Council. And Kenya has taken a very firm stand on this issue. In Kenya, we stand to lose about 10 billion Kenyan shillings worth of exports to Russia as a result of sanctions. That is about 100 million US dollars. We export coffee, tobacco, coffee, tea, spices, live trees, plants, bulbs, roots, cut flowers, edible fruits, nuts, and melons to both Russia and Ukraine. In 2020, we imported wheat, maize, and fertilizers worth about 400 and the disruptions of war at a time our economy can hardly afford such a stress. We in Kenya know too well the cost of war as a result of the conflicts in our neighboring countries. Our interventions in Somalia, necessary as it is, has been very expensive to us. It is estimated that we spend at least 2.8 million US dollars per personnel costs alone, on personnel costs alone. As the African Union High Representative for Infrastructure Development, I have come to deeply appreciate the need for linking countries through infrastructure to promote trade, development, in financing development, and in fighting wars or supporting peacekeepers in our war-torn neighbors, necessary as this has become. As the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, and as a champion of democratization and good governance in Africa, I will give primacy to the pursuit of conflict resolution and continental peace within the framework of the African Union. In this regard, we in East Africa are proud of the progress in the East African community, which has now expanded its membership and which now stands at 7. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is now the latest entrant. This now creates a landmass that spans from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. The real scandal about the global response to COVID-19 has been the vaccine inequity, or what has been called vaccine apartheid. Because of the international outcry, these inequities are now being addressed. I want to personally express my appreciation for countries, especially the UK, Europe, and the US, for addressing vaccine shortages in Kenya and in Africa. However, we need a more structural solution to vaccine inequity to avoid the recurrence of what has happened with COVID. Vaccine manufacturing capacity in Africa is urgent, as is the licensing of vaccines for local production to expedite the vaccination process continentally. And here we're happy that Kenya has now signed an agreement to be able to have vaccines produced locally in Kenya. Multilateralism will also save us from senseless conflicts like the one we are currently witnessing between Russia and Ukraine. I must say that wars of aggression against sovereign states violate the cardinal principles of sovereignty and the inviolability of borders of a state. In Africa, we long realized that reopening grievances over colonial borders would append us all. It's a Pandora's box that must never be touched. And that is why the African Union and before it, the Organization of African Unity, has stuck religiously to the international law principle of uti possidetis juris. It provides that newly formed sovereign states should retain the internal borders that their preceding dependent areas had before their independence. Kenya's position at the United Nations in full support of the immediate cessation of hostility by Russia and a search for common peace, which has found widespread international support. Even though we beat the drums of war, let us ring the bells of peace and summon where all conflicts can be resolved through dialogue. It is in this spirit of dialogue that His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and I resolved in March 2018 that Kenya's long-standing conflicts and disagreements among our communities and political parties could be resolved through dialogue. We held extensive discussions, looked into our history, the genesis and evolution of political disagreements, and the contradictions we needed to pay attention to. Then we shook hands publicly and announced our commitment to create a political system that would accommodate our social, ethnic, and political differences in an inclusive democratic process. This is what came to be known as the Building Bridge, or BBI. The initiative held public consultations and suggested various reforms with regard to public policy, the constitution, elections, inclusivity in government, endemic corruption, and improving the general well-being of our people. The BBI is currently tied up in the Supreme Court, whose ruling we shall abide by. The spirit of dialogue and handshake continues in the Azimio la Umoja movement, on whose ticket I'm seeking to be the president. Azimio is a broad national democratic movement which puts national unity, inclusive development, and transparent and accountable use of public resources. I am convinced the Constitution introduced a devolved system of government that has brought tremendous changes in the governance and distribution and the use of public resources at the grassroots. Devolution is here with us to stay. We can only make it better through higher allocation of the national budget to the counties. The Constitution stipulates that at least 15% of the budget should be allocated to the counties. We in Azimio la Umoja coalition propose that the allocation be raised to at least 35% of the national budget. I will pursue this proposal. I have always believed in the dictum that a central government does governs least at the local level. Good. Article 43 of our Constitution guarantees Kenyans basic social and economic rights such as education, health, food, water, housing, and social security. I will purpose to implement this very important article. The COVID-19 pandemic has left our economy struggling. I intend to radically shift focus to supporting the micro, small, and medium enterprises and give them resources for scaling up and fill gaps emerging from the pandemic. I also plan to provide a supportive regulatory framework, including providing linkages by providing inputs to farmers to enable us to produce for consumption and export. In the long term, I plan for the Azimio to prioritize an industrialization policy that is export-minded and that allows the private sector to drive the export agenda. I will support the private sector to lead a shift from exporting raw materials and agricultural produce and venture into industrial manufacturing with eyes on the international market. We will continue to expand the frontiers of quality public education and also pay more attention to skills-oriented education at the basic level to prepare students for productive work when they do not pursue higher professions at college and above. The current government has done a great job with regard to universal health coverage. My government will take up from where the Jubilee government has reached and eliminate the difference in terms of quality and cost between the public and private health facilities. Universal access must be universal access in word and in deed. I intend to improve health knowledge and awareness among our people so that family, community, healthcare are part of our healthcare infrastructure. I also intend to establish an institute for biotechnology and genetic engineering in Kenya so as to enhance our domestic capacity to develop vaccines and pharmaceuticals. Social protection will be central in the delivery of social services to the poor and indigent under my government. I told our citizens that our major reason, I hope that one major reason that I hope to be their leader is to help lift the extreme poor and vulnerable families so that they can access the basics and later support themselves. We will also mount serious war on corruption and unveil fundamental reforms to the structure of our economy. Much said about Kenya's indebtedness. Kenya is now approaching US $100 billion in public debt. This puts Kenya in the group of the most indebted, debt-stressed middle and lower income developing countries, now being forced into IMF credit and IMF supervised austerity programs. Such austerity programs are usually implemented in the sole interest of satisfying the debt repayment at the expense of people's livelihoods. You have no choice in the matter. We'll have to seek the indulgence and cooperation of our development partners to negotiate our debt. I will also audit our debt to establish its actual size. We acknowledge that even our troubles with the debt are in the part caused by corruption, kleptocracy, and a state capture. We'll mount a serious war on corruption. Corruption, as it manifests today, is a global phenomenon. We need a new global partnership around this critical issue. Although the tax burden on Kenyans is now unbearable, I will make sure Kenya does not default on debt repayment. In future, we will strive to borrow at a favorable interest rate, negotiate repayment periods that are not stressful, and invest in enterprises that give good social and economic return. Finally, Kenya is committed to rolling back global warming through drastic reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, particularly at the industrial and corporate level, in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. As Kenya's Prime Minister in the year 2008 to 2013, I was at the forefront in the struggle to save our water towers, expand afforestation, and increase large-scale production of green energy by increased investment in geothermal, solar, and wind power. My government will move systematically to replace fossil fuels with green energy in production and transportation, generally. We have done what we could do to save and preserve our water towers in the country, because this came at a political price that we said we are ready to pay so that we can be able to protect our environment. I am continue to be committed to ensuring that Kenya contributes its part in this global undertaking to make our environment much more safe for future generations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Raila Odinga, for laying out your vision for Kenya if you get elected president in August. We have plenty of time for Q&A, so the hands are already going up. Just a reminder to those of you that are live streaming with us, if you're on Zoom, you can indicate that you want to ask a question. Either send your question in, and we'll also try and unmute a few of you to give you that opportunity to ask the question live. My apologies if you are on our live stream and not on the Zoom platform, you're not going to be able to ask a question, but I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing, and do tweet if you want to. So let me go across the room now, and the hands are up, so I'll take a cluster of questions. Honourable Raila, the gentleman there. Yep, you sir, please introduce yourself and ask your question. Just one question, please, because we're going to get plenty.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Raila Odinga. My name is Fred. I teach political science at King's College London. And
who you are?
My name is Fred. I teach political science at King's College London. And my question is regard to your program for the middle class in Kenya, because your opponent, William Ruto, has this bottom-up approach about the poor. You also have this welfare program for the poor, but nobody's talking about the middle class in Kenya who have to pay the taxation to take care for this program. So what exactly are you going to do for the Kenyan middle class in terms of improving their welfare? Thank you.
Okay, don't worry, we're going through the room. You, sir? Yeah.
Afternoon. My name is Julius Baluto. I'm a broadcast journalist here in the UK. Prime Minister, my question focuses on the youth and the future of... Julius Baluto.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question focuses on the youth in Kenya and the future. Prime Minister, a lot of developing countries, they do have what we call innovation hubs scattered across, whereby if a child has a brilliant idea, they take it there, and then government kind of supports that to keep innovating. I know Kenya is very innovative. With M-Pesa, for example, is taking, money transfer to the next level in Kenya. What are your programs like when it comes to help youth in terms of innovation?
Thank you very much. And let's get right over, but one question, please. Yes? Guaranteed?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Right Honourable. Welcome back to London. My question is regards to your agenda. My name is Wekesa. I also teach at King's College London. My question regards with your agenda point number 10, and that's you speak about administrative continuity, and you've touched on corruption. Your brother, President Kenyatta, admittedly that he couldn't do anything about corruption, and you've been at the forefront of condemning corruption from saying Kenyatta stole the Eurobond. I wonder, what will your government do if you're going to continue with the same administrative in terms of fighting the same corruption with regards to the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, the KEMSA COVID billionaires? Like, what's different are you going to do? And does administrative continuity mean also inheriting the lethargic fight against corruption? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take those three and then we'll come back. So I'll do another round in the hall and then I'll go for a live stream on back to you. Please go ahead.
This one is about, Fred talked about the plans that we have for the middle class. Of course, as you see, there's been a lot of emphasis on the underprivileged class, which is the poor. The middle class, of course, know very well how to look after themselves. But there are not people who are looking for the very basic requirements like basic shelter, food on the table, and so on. Middle class are looking for example, affordable housing, shelter. They're looking for good schools for their children, which is affordable. The lowering cost of living generally, ensuring that food is basically available and reasonable. The cost of energy, which has affected the middle class. And those are the things that we intend to address, making sure that the transport system is working in urban environment, and also basically urban transport is working properly. I mentioned the cost of energy and so on. So those are issues that we are in our manifesto comprehensively, which will ensure that the middle class grows. We want to grow the middle class. What we've said is that you don't deprive those who have in order to empower the poor. And like the emphasis has been made in what they call the bottoms-up approach. We are saying that we create a conducive environment for upward social mobility to allow as many people coming to rise up and join the middle class and in the upper classes. This is what we're intending to do. The youth innovation, yes, our youth are very vibrant and very creative indeed. You just mentioned the example of the M-Pesa. We are the ones who invented the mobile money, which we've given to the world. Unfortunately, the inventor himself, from the product of his work, we've said that you need to be able to protect intellectual property of the youth. They make inventions, they are protected so that they can be able to benefit from what comes out of them. It will create a lot of incentives to promote the youth to be more creative in inventions in our country. Okay. This is intellectual property. Mr. Wekesa, I've said yes, that we will continue the positive work that have been done by the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta. I've never said that we are going to inherit the negative things. There are several negative things that Uhuru himself has actually admitted. He said that, for example, the government loses close to 2 billion shillings daily into corruption. From within his own government, by his deputy, who is basically an opposition inside the government. And therefore, any fight against corruption is politicized. If anybody is investigated by investigative authorities and is arrested or being charged, there's always the cry that, so-and-so is being targeted because he's my supporter. So-and-so is being because he's my supporter. So they cannot really fight against this corruption internally because of internal contradictions. I do not have that kind of baggage myself. I'm coming in there with clean hands, and people know me. Remember when I was Prime Minister, at the time when I actually suspended 2 ministers because of investigations which had been carried out and pointed to those ministers. Unfortunately, because of, at that time, the internal divisions, the government, they were saved by my partner at that time. But you say that nobody will be indispensable in the government. And if you want to really carry out a successful war against corruption, then you just begin yourself. If any member of your family is caught in this, you must ensure that action is taken against them. I give an example of Kagame, whose own brother was arrested and imprisoned, and would go to visit his brother in prison and just tell him, sorry, but this is where you belong. You know, if you take those kind of actions, then people will begin to know that it is not business as usual. It must be business as usual to dealing with this hydra-headed animal called corruption. And there will be a determination to do it. But it is not only sometimes need to be investigated. Prosecutorial authorities